mentor. It's been a great support to his fellow service members, and we asked him to come join us today and share a little bit about his story and um, what he's doing now with his profession. So, Brian, if it's okay, I have two volunteers who are going to MC the session for you. So we have Megan and Heidi. So Megan is gonna introduce you, and then those guys will go back and forth asking a few questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience if that's okay.
Sounds good.
All right, terrific. All right, take it away, Meg.
Hello, sir. Thank you for coming. Brian is a U.S. Army veteran. He still currently serves as a major in the U.S. Army Reserve training future officers. He was on active duty for 11 years as both an officer and enlisted soldier. During his time on active duty, he served as troop commander, com- combat advisor, platoon leader, and congressional intern. He is a veteran of both the Iraq and Afghan wars. Following his time on active duty, he built a successful career in device sales and industry, rising to become the regional sales director as Coloplast. I think I said that right.
Yep.
Thank you. In this role, he leads a high-performing seven-person team across 13 Western states, overseeing a 9.5 million regional business. Under his leadership, the team achieved an 11.4% year-over-year revenue increase despite market challenges. Brian is also the co-founder and president of Valor, a veteran-focused employee resource group at Coloplast, and has played a key role in optimizing inventory processes to support operational efficiency and men's health.
Thank you.
Great job, Megan. That was good. All right, Heidi, why don't you take us out?
Sure. Good morning. How are you doing, Brian? Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy for the opportunity.
Yeah, we appreciate your time today. So that's quite a background. Could you give us an idea of maybe how some of your leadership skills leading teams in the field during combat operations has impacted how you lead in the civilian career, or has that had any translation for you?
Yeah, I think for those of us that are transitioning out of the service, that's really honestly why a lot of corporations hire us. I got into professional sales. I got into the medical device industry, and the leadership qualities and skill set that you have to have as a leader are really kind of what they're looking for. When I was interviewing for my job, I couldn't describe to you what a sales process was. I didn't understand what a value proposition was. I didn't understand how to discover an unmet need. But what I had to communicate to companies was that uh, for my generation of soldier, um, I think a lot of us, if you served over the last 15 years, we've all deployed a lot. Many of us found ourselves in positions where my job title was tank platoon leader, but I was working by, with, and through an indigenous force in order to secure an area of operation. Not with my tanks, but with more shaking hands and having relationships with city leaders. And so what I really demonstrated to the companies that wanted to hire me was that I was adaptable. I was malleable in a lot of ways. And our role in the military is very mission driven. And the role in sales organizations are very mission driven. In the military, we do it for a higher purpose. We're trying to provide some level of freedom for whatever country we're in or support a force there. In sales organizations, your mission is to drive revenue. But with both of those, the commonality is it's very clear what you're supposed to do. And so there's, this is probably a subject that I could talk a long time about, but really those are the qualities that companies are looking for and why they're hiring us. And why many transitioning service members will go to these hiring conferences and you will interview with 8 different companies that do 8 completely different things, but that leadership piece is really what they're looking for.
So, rolling off of the leadership piece, across geographically separate locations, how has that been challenge-wise?
That's actually been something really to get used to. So when I was first out and I was in an individual contributor role, and I think a lot of people in the military can, empathize with this. You, as much as we love the camaraderie of the military, you're always with your unit. You show up to PT, you go get ready, you go back to the barracks, everyone's in the barracks, or you go back to your house, then you go back to work, and everyone is always there. You're always around people. When I first got into sales, it was really odd um, to not be around people when I would get up and go to work in the morning. Obviously, I was a rep. So I had to get up, drive to a hospital, but you're not really dealing with your coworkers, you're dealing with customers and you're dealing with people that you need to support. And you may be in one hospital one day and another hospital the next day, and then not back in that hospital for a month or a couple other months, depending on how much business a certain account does. So that took a little bit to get used to. And now I manage a team that's located over the 13 states or parts of 13 states that I manage. There are parts of my region that I hardly ever go to. If I told all of you guys that Hawaii is part of my region, you would be like, "Why aren't you in Hawaii all the time?" Because there's not a lot of business out there. It takes a long time to get to, and so you have to take the leadership foundation that you receive in the military and adapt it to corporate life. But that's one of the biggest ones to get used to is I have people on my team that I've had on my team because our national sales meeting was canceled last year. They've been teammates for 2 years and they've never met each other in person. I mean, imagine that working with coworkers that you rely on to do things for you that you've never met face to face. So that's a little bit of a, I don't want to say a challenge, but that's something that's a little bit different being a field-based employee in the medical device field.
Yeah, that sounds like a challenge. I know I consider myself an extrovert, so not seeing people face to face on a daily basis, I can see as being a potential challenge. Are there anything or any ways that you've tried to overcome that with your team, like weekly get-togethers on Zoom or anything like that, that kind of keeps the team connected, or do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, I think to the point that you're making, you do have to be deliberate about it. How often do we come together as a team? How do we communicate with each other? When you have new employees, encouraging them to reach out to their teammates individually. Um, it sounds really simple and kind of dumb, but the team text thread, you could kind of gauge the morale and engagement of your team by how much they're communicating with each other on the text thread, how comfortable they are to reach out to each other. So we haven't really gotten into specifically the medical device industry yet, but in my niche within the medical device space, each one of my reps has a relatively small number of customers that they have to build deep, deep relationships with. And there's always a risk on bringing in another rep to cover a surgical procedure if you don't have a lot of confidence in that rep. And so what you kind of see as you're building a team is how often are they reaching out to other reps to come in and cover cases for them and utilizing their teammates. And when you start to see that confidence grow, that's a little bit of an indicator that morale's pretty good on the team. Things are flowing pretty well. Another challenge that you have in the sales industry is the type of people that you hire. So coming into sales seems a little counterintuitive to military leaders. We're used to working directly with people on teams, and what you typically hire is people that are very individualistic, people that are very money motivated. And how do you, through the hiring process and building the culture of your team, start to build a team full of team players in an otherwise, world of lone wolves? And so those are things that I do as a manager. And for the people on the call that are like, I would never get into sales, I'm a team player. um, that's the value I think that a lot of us coming out of the military have in corporate sales, is that we are very dialed into to team dynamics, and how do we build those team dynamics deliberately, instead of sort of like just allowing them to happen organically. Because what I see from a lot of my colleagues that have grown up in the sales world is that is their biggest struggle once they become managers. I think for me, if I look at my team, I have a team of 7 people. I would say that 5 of them are better sales people than I am. Um, but I can say in a non-arrogant, cocky way, I'm a better leader than they are. And that's my value to the team, is that I have, I think we all start in the military depending on what age you join. I was 21 when I enlisted in the Army. I was in my first leadership position when I was 22, not counting those, fake leadership positions they put you in basic training, but like a evaluated leadership position. So I've been a leader since I was 22. I'm 43 now, so I have 21 years of leadership experience, and my reps have an equal number of being an individual contributor. So when I look at my team, I look at us as colleagues, but this is my function on the team, that it's my job to lead them, organize them, and for us to grow our business collectively.
I feel like I was an element leader in basic training.
Yeah.
I can't say I was that cool. Was not the cool kid. I was actually trying to hide in basic training.
I tried to hide too, except when I went to basic training, when I left MEPS, I'm 6'4", and I was about 285, 290 pounds. So I was like if you guys have ever seen that movie Full Metal Jacket, I was like the private pile.
Oh no, not private pile. So we have a few members actually interested in sales, and you brought up like you transitioning into sales. What advice would you have for those members? Trying to move into that path.
Well, the first piece of advice that I would give them is, one, good job. And the reason I say that is because, and I talked to Jordy a little bit about it when we first spoke, was the concept of me getting out of the Army. When I was coming onto the call, I saw all the people with all their kids and everything like that. I was in that same position, and as I was transitioning, my biggest concern was, will I be able to provide a lifestyle, maintain a lifestyle, or grow a lifestyle and support my kids? Because I think that for people in the military, no matter what your experience is, whether you're a logistician or a special forces operator, you know, the operational requirements of the military are crazy. We get deployed all the time. We get sent around the world all the time. Just to leave your family and go to your development, your PME, is disruptive for your family. You're constantly disruptive. But what is steady in the military? Healthcare, paychecks. You're always going to get, you're going to get paid. And if you don't, it's like a 5 alarm fire, and you go down to your S1 and you fix it. My concern about getting out and going into sales was, I feel like I could live in a tent in downtown Los Angeles if I had to, but I would never want something for that for my family. And so getting into sales was very nerve-wracking for me. And so I say all that to say this, um, sales is an awesome profession. It has a very negative connotation. Maybe when some of you guys saw that I was going to be on here today, you're like, "Oh, awesome! A freaking sales guy. What's he going to try to sell us?" By the end of the call, but sales is about education. It's about being the go-between between your operational team that produces a product and your customer. So you have to know your product in and out, and you have to know your customer, and you have to be able to deliver, communicate that value proposition, and do all those types of things. But be very careful about the type of sales that you go into. I would never encourage somebody coming out of the service, unless you don't have any financial obligations other than yourself, to go into something that is 100% commission based. Um, Look deliberately at, does when you're interviewing with the company, um, does the territory or business that you're going to take over already have an existing book of business? I know a lot of folks that have gotten out and have gone to work for companies like Liberty Mutual, or there's another big one that's in Colorado area that I'm drawing a blank on, or like Edward Jones or things like that. Um, just be prepared. Those can be very lucrative financially in the long run, and I have had some peers that have done very well in those financial services sales industries. But it takes a while to build up a practice. And so you'll be a little bit concerned with your income. When I came into the medical device arena, I had a base salary. Living in LA, you can't just live off your base salary, especially if you have a family. And I don't live in LA anymore for probably a lot of the same reasons that a lot of people have moved out of California. But that base salary is at least something. And then make sure, look for jobs where they provide benefits. My company has all the benefits, everything like that. So, there wasn't a disruption in benefits for me leaving the service. And I know in the introduction, you mentioned that I'm an Army reservist. I had about a 4-year break in service. And so that insurance piece was very critical for me, um, when I got out, to make sure I had that for my family, and there wasn't any sort of break in benefits for my family, so they could still receive the medical care that they needed, and all that kind of stuff. So a little bit of a long-winded answer, but um, for anyone on this call, Jordy has my contact information. Uh, Mentoring is very important to me. I mentor with American Corporate Partners. I'm the president of an employee resource group, and I talk to veterans all the time. So we all have finite time in life. That is the other thing that I do. I don't have any hobbies. I don't golf. I ski occasionally, but I will always make time if somebody is listening to this and very interested in medical device sales, or in the sales profession in general, and wants to have sort of a more in-depth conversation about a lot of these challenges. I know we only have so much time here today, but this is a subject that I could talk to you guys about for probably 8 hours if we had the time.
Thank you so much. That wasn't too long-winded. I think that was great. I mean, telling us about making sure you're getting insurance and whatnot, that's so crucial. People don't think about it because we get it for free in the military.
Oh,
Um,
one other thing, Megan, that you got to think about:
yes, sir.
taxes.
Oh, yes,
I didn't even know what a tax was until I got out of the military. I'm sure I paid it, but then I got it right back at the end of the year. Everybody loves April, right? You submit your taxes, you get this big check back. If you were deployed, you don't even pay taxes, and then you get a big check back at the end of the year anyway. When I transition off active duty, uh, my boss goes, "Hey man, I got you a $15,000 signing bonus." And I was like, "Holy cow," because in the military, that's a lot of cheese, right? And so I get there and I get the bonus, and I go up and I ask my wife at the time. I was like, "Hey, I think they only gave me like a partial payment on the bonus." And she's like, "Why?" And I'm like, "It only looks like it's about half of what they said I was going to get." And then I pulled up the pay stub and I was like, "What? Who? who took all this money? Like, where's it going? It's mine, but it wasn't mine. It was, the state of California's and the federal government's, and the way that they tax commissions is a whole nother subject where you think, like I paid about 50% taxes on my last paycheck. So I'm sure I'll get some back at the end of the year, but holy cow, that one was a big shock for me, was how much money they took out for taxes. Which is why I live back in Nevada now, where I grew up, where they don't have state income tax.
Holy moly.
Yeah, that was a little
50%.
bit of a shock.
Ouch.
I think the government is the most expensive dependent we all have.
The government is the most expensive dependent we have. Yes.
Yes.
No truer statement has ever been spoken.
Yes. We have a couple of questions for you. AJ, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. How's it going, Brian?
Good. How are you?
Good. So personally, I'm in a degree program for strength and conditioning. So I've seen how fast the medical community like shifts, like how fast the science moves, and
Yeah.
how different things can be in a very short amount of time. How does your company stay nimble in sourcing new equipment and staying current?
That's an awesome question. It's sort of necessity, AJ, honestly. We are in a very competitive space. So I work in urology. Uh, I would say it stays competitive a number of different ways. One, we acquire a lot of technology. A lot of the big companies do that, and they go out there. Typically in the medical device field, it's a lot of startups, and the goal of these startups is to get acquired. And there's a million different disease states and a million different products that they need, and they are constantly innovating. Some of our divisions do it organically. We have research and development, and we develop new products, and we go through the process of getting FDA approval, and we introduce those, and then we launch a sales force. And then, or we go out there and we acquire these businesses that typically, in my experience, what I've seen is um, there's several companies that compete. So I'm in men's health within the interventional urology division, and there's specific disease states that there's no better way to say this, that are some money makers. And so a new technology will get introduced, and then a company's revenue will skyrocket. And then another company, it's usually somebody that worked for that company when they were in startup mode, has left that company. They'll develop a similar technology to compete with that and take some of the market share. And so there's this constant mergers and acquisitions process. There's this constant research and development process. There's constant interaction with our physicians. We call them VOCs, voice of customer. And we'll either try to gain some insights on how we can improve our existing technology in order to grow market share, or are there complementary technologies? And is there a company out there that's providing a complementary technology? And then should we be an early investor in that company? My company is invested in, just my division is invested in, I think, in like 3 or 4 different companies, and they're just waiting and seeing how their technology progresses, and if it's something that's going to be feasible to sponsor the FDA approval process and then to launch that technology. So, if any of you guys have that sort of mind, mergers and acquisitions or business development opportunities within corporations is a really fun space to be in. If you're a strategic thinker now and you operate at a high level, those might be really interesting opportunities to look at as you're transitioning out. Or down the road, like you get out, you get into a business, you enjoy the business, and then that's something else we can talk about too, is like in military service, I can only speak for the Army, but the Army, a lot of times you're just on a conveyor belt. I was a tank platoon leader, then I was an XO, and then I was a commander, then I went on staff, and now I'm back on staff and looking to be a commander again, and so all of that. But my career is very managed and very linear. If I wanted to be a general officer, which I don't, um, I could figure out how to navigate to be there. When you get out into the service, one of the challenges you have is it's a little bit like choose your own adventure. How do you manage your career deliberately that you have to manage versus the service that you're in managing it for you?
AJ, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And then out of curiosity, what are the big movers? CPAPs and MRIs?
CPAP's a huge space.
Yeah.
I can really only speak to my little niche, sort of in, urology. I think the next big mover is is prostate cancer. So there are or overactive bladder. And the reason why I say that is because it's a very prevalent disease state that deals with life or death treatments. And those treatments come with what we call in the industry negative functional outcomes. And so I work in men's health. And so a negative functional outcome of prostate cancer surgery, for those that don't know, is stress urinary incontinence. For those that don't know what that means, I didn't, so that's why I say that. You can't hold your urine. So they pull out your prostatic gland, they remove the cancer, and then you have to wear diapers. Or you have sexual side effects, so erectile dysfunction. And there are multiple treatment options for that, but if you have cancer and you lose that functionality, it's very impactful on your quality of life. And so what they're developing now are more and more technologies called focal therapies that are attacking the cancer itself and preventing some of these negative functional outcomes. So I think prostate cancer is still the second leading cause of death for men. And so there's a lot of resources and money that's being invested into how can we treat prostate cancer and avoid some of these negative functional outcomes. Very
Okay, so that
similar for like if you guys think about breast cancer, what's a very common treatment for breast cancer? A single or double mastectomy. Well, women still have a lot of life they want to live. They want to feel whole, just like our men who have prostate cancer and lose erectile ability or lose continence. Um, you know, they're looking for better ways to treat breast cancer so that a woman doesn't have to lose her quote unquote womanhood in the course of removing cancer. So cancer
okay.
space will always be big, and you guys probably know that already in terms of how many times have you heard this one? They could cure cancer if they want to, but there's too much money in treating cancer. That's true to some regard. There's a lot of money in treating cancer. So I don't know if the conspiracy is true, but it is true that there's a lot of money in treating cancer.
That answer your question, AJ?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, I have another question for you. Jesse, you want to take it away?
Yes, thank you, sir, for being here with us today. So earlier you were talking about like what people think when they think about sales. So actually, before I joined the military, I was working for a company called MCI. I don't know if you remember that one. It was like a telephone company.
I
All
don't.
right. So I was basically like a telemarketer, and that was hell. That was one of the big reasons why I said I had to get the hell out, get out of there and get a real job. So I joined the Air Force. So in that job, I was sitting in a big room and I was calling people like all the time. It's a telemarketing thing.
Yep.
How is what's the day to day like for your employees? Is it anything like that?
Well, and that's a great example. That's our, a lot of us first experience into sales because I did sales before the Army. I don't know if everyone remembers Cutco knives. Um, but
Kind of.
as a recent high school graduate, I got sucked in by an ad that says we pay our salespeople $12 an hour. And back in 2000, $12 an hour was good money, plus an opportunity at commission. So I went out there and sold Cutco knives, and I washed out in probably 3 or 4 months. Um, my ex-wife's grandpa sold Juice Plus, if you guys remember that, like the Juice Man. I sold some health food supplements. That was not fun. That is nothing like what my industry is. There are different jobs, like I sold pharmaceuticals for a little while. I did not love selling pharmaceuticals. You're just another rep that's out there pushing a drug, and they want to get rid of you in the quote unquote gatekeeper in the office, which is typically your front office manager, wants to get rid of you as quickly as possible, and you have to be very skilled at quote getting behind the desk. That wasn't necessarily fun. The space that I'm in now is we sell several implantable devices, and there's a need. And so the biggest challenge that we have are finding those physicians that have dedicated a portion of their practice to um, treating these disease states. And if we can find those physicians, then we can communicate why our product is better than the competition and what type of patients these would best serve. And we're really more of a resource. And a quick story, when I was at my hiring conference, I was interviewing with my future boss and his regional manager colleague, and she knew that I was interviewing for 7 other sales jobs. And what she said to me at the end of the interview, which really got me, is she goes, "Is it important for you to be respected?" And, I was coming out of company command, and I was, yeah, it's important. I think for those of us in the military, respect is codified in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And so it's very important to us that we're respected. And essentially what she was communicating was, you're going to interview with these other companies, but you're not going to be more respected by your physician partners than you will at this company. And I eventually signed with that company and worked with that company, and I'm still in the same industry. And so, going back to what I was saying originally, for those people that are thinking about sales, or Jesse, your not so great experience, um, be deliberate about the type of industry that you get into. And even within that industry, the type of job that you get. I could say, come to urology, it's fun, it's niche. The doctors, I don't want to say they don't take themselves too seriously because they are physicians, but, they're dealing with genitalia all day. They're not going to have the same God syndrome as maybe a cardiologist might, or an orthopedic surgeon. They're a little bit more easygoing. And so being very deliberate about which opportunities you have and what type of sales, because I don't ever feel, well, I don't want to say ever, but I never have that telemarketer experience. I'm never sitting in a call center with 50 other reps around me dialing for dollars. I just don't have that life, and I've never had that life since I've gotten into professional sales. So it's just being, figuring out the right space to be in.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you
Yep,
very much for that.
absolutely.
And I want to thank you for the spotlight you're putting on men's health, because I think it's one of those things that just doesn't get as much as attention as it should. I think there's a lot of men out there suffering in silence because we don't really talk about it like we do breast cancer. There's a whole month dedicated to that. So it's a really important topic, and I think it's great that you're talking about it here. We do have another question from Jose.
Hey Brian, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Hey Brian, I got a question. Have you ever worked with hematology equipment like Beckman Coulter, and that realm yet? I'm just curious because I did that for a while, and I want to gauge like the sales portion of the house. Like, what's your experience like?
Yeah, unfortunately, Jose, I haven't. Um, yeah, I'm just trying to recall my experience. I've
You
I've
do.
been almost primarily in urology, and yeah, I'm just trying to think. I don't think I have.
What
So I've
about
worked in
spectrum
prostate cancer,
analyzers?
kidney cancer, men's health, and BPH are the disease states that I've worked in.
What about spectrum analyzers like light scatter, laser scatter machines, things like that? Have you gotten into that realm?
Um, I don't, well, I sold a green light laser for a little while. The laser was to treat not to give you guys an anatomy or disease state lesson, but guys get older, they got to pee a lot more. The reason why they have to pee a lot more is because their prostate's getting bigger and bigger. And so we sold a laser technology that helped ablate or remove excess prosthetic tissue so that men will have normal urine flow. So we sold a laser for that, but that's probably the closest that I've got to any of those types of technologies.
So I guess the reason I'm asking the question is how hard is it to get into that industry for sales, or is that something you're looking to break into in the future for you and your team?
I don't think right now we're looking at me and my team are looking to break into that space. But to your bigger question, there's I tell people, when I'm mentoring people, one of the biggest challenges I have is, hey, great, Brian, you've sold me on this medical device industry. I want to do it. Now, where do I go? Um, and it's challenging. I got really lucky by going to a junior military officer hiring conference. The companies were already there. Um, I call it like the speed dating of job seeking. Um, but there's just so many variables that can impact whether or not you get into the industry. Um, that was one of the reasons I was so happy to connect with this group, quite honestly, is because for those of you that may be interested in coming into my industry, we can have individual conversations about how that might actually happen. Um, we have openings. Probably the easiest opening, and some of you that are looking for a very specific paycheck. I made the equivalent of this in the military. I'm an O3, I'm an E8. I need my income to stay about the same. Um, those are some of the challenges that you might see. If you really want to get into this industry, some of you may have to take one step back from an income perspective, from a responsibility perspective, to ultimately take two steps forward from that income perspective. The easiest way to break into my industry are in our clinical roles. And so we hire people based on characteristics and aptitude into clinical roles, and we train them to be medical device reps. And so there are a lot of companies that do that. A lot of my competitors do it. People I've mentored in the past, I've recommended they look for roles like field sales associate, clinical specialist, clinical sales representative, associate territory manager, those types of roles that will allow you to break into the industry, learn about it. Like the guy that I hired in San Francisco, he sold Teslas and was a medical assistant at one of the offices that we worked in. The guy that I hired in Salt Lake City, he was selling fine art and had a background in oil and gas. But he had all these characteristics and these aptitudes. Before that guy in Salt Lake City, he's a super high performer, and he's going to be a territory manager very soon. So he took a little bit of a pay cut and a step back in order to get into our industry. And in about a year to 18 months, he's going to be a territory manager. And Jordy, I don't know if you want me to get into stuff like that, like how much do these people make,
Yeah, it'd be
sort of a
awesome. Yeah,
deal.
share it with them. Why not?
So our clinical reps start out at about $100,000 a year, and $60,000 of that is base pay, and $40,000 of that is what we call variable compensation. That's tied to some sort of performance indicator. So for us, for the clinicals that work on my team, it's tied to the revenue of the entire region, not necessarily the territory where they live, but the region as a whole. And they get paid on a quarterly basis that pay. New territory managers typically make between 135,000 and 165,000. My reps that have been in this industry for 10 to 20 years, they're typically making between 195,000 and $225,000 a year. And depending on the technology that you sell, those reps make more. So it can be a way to make a really good living. Um, so if you're in one of those positions, when I got out of the Army, I was an O3E. So I had enlisted time. I was an O3E with 11 years in. At Fort Carson with my BAH and my salary, I made about $90,000 a year. The first job that I took, being a territory manager, I made 165,000. Um, but go back to the first part of our conversation. I went out to LA where there was a huge cost of living. I had to pay for my health care. So my relative quality of life was about the same when I first got out. So if you're in one of those positions where I just want to break into the industry, just put me in, coach, give me a shot, let me show my qualities. Um, Probably the easiest place for you to start is one of those entry level clinical positions. Learn the product, learn the disease state, grow your profile in the company, and then you can move on to a different position. One of the things that helped me too is a lot of people coming out of the military, they want to drop roots. I'm tired of moving. Um, I want to get someplace wherever I take that first job, that's where I'm going to be. One thing that can help you is I got out in Colorado, I went to LA, I moved back home to Reno. I left the industry for a little while. I went down to Arizona. I got promoted. I came back home to Reno, and now I'm basically based here. But if you're willing to kind of bounce around a little bit and go where the job is and sacrifice for 2 to 3 years, you can eventually get a territory and drop some roots and then really establish yourself in a particular territory. But if you're willing to make that sacrifice, I think it just optimizes your career opportunities in the long run. It has for me.
That makes sense. And good points on, salary might not match right away. And just being willing to just, get in to get in. And being a little bit more willing to relocate is also a good point. We do have another question from someone who is interested in sales. Richard, would you like to take it away?
Yes, sir. Or yes, ma'am. Excuse me. Brian, thank you for jumping on the call. We appreciate your time here. This has been a very insightful time for me, especially as I'm in the sales track and I plan to be in sales in the future. I was curious, how often are you guys training on like the daily? What are your guys' commissions and how are you guys getting out? How are you guys getting your product out to the people that are willing to buy? Are we calling? Are we cold calling? Are we doing emails? Are we working on social media? What are those routes? What are those channels, I should say, for lack of better terms, in order to get your guys' product out and make those sales and make those calls?
Big, huge question, Richard. Three big areas. So number one, I'll address them in the order that you threw them at me. Training. So a lot of the training is our training for our company, and it has been pretty standard for all the companies that I've worked with. Um, Unlike the military, where you're recruited in big cohorts and you go off to a big training center and you do all those types of things. Some companies have that. Pharmaceutical companies have that. They have 10 reps in a geography, and then times all the territories across the country, they'll bring you back to their home office. I've primarily worked in smaller disease states, smaller devices. So all of my training has gone something like this. You do your onboarding, and you have about 2 weeks of home training. They send you modules where you have to learn the anatomy, you have to learn the disease state, you have to learn the products. You're going to get some direct coaching and mentoring from a field sales trainer. The in-house sales trainer will give you a call, and then you're going to have your manager, and they're going to try to help get you up to speed. And then you're going to go out there and you're going to observe procedures, because it's one thing like holding a device, and then it's another thing going like, where the hell does that device go? And then you go into the operating room and you have to get credentialed at all these hospitals and you have to do all those types of things. So we'll call that phase one. Phase one is home office training with OJT, on the job training. And then once they get enough reps, they do phase two training. In phase two training, you go back, you go into cadaver labs, you get the formal in-person training that's about a week. Some companies it's a little bit longer. Most of the companies that I've been with, it's been 1 week of training. And then you go back out into the field. And when you come out of phase 2 training, you're supposed to be ready to start covering cases on your own. You're supposed to be ready to start engaging customers and communicating your value proposition, and start conducting field activities. For a lot of these companies, they know it's going to take you a little bit of time to get up to speed. So you're on a guarantee for the first 3 to 6 months that you're there. So regardless of territory performance, you're going to get a commission check based on historic performance of the territory for about 6 months. And then so then when you're back after phase 2, you're in phase 3 where you have contact with your field sales trainer. You're continuing to do OJT. You're continuing to go to a lot of cases and you're really getting that experience. And then phase 4 happens about 6 months into the job. You go back and they really hammer on the sales competencies you need to grow and drive business. Because before you can sell in this industry, you have to know what your product does. You have to understand how it changes people's lives. You have to be able to see that impact. You have to be able to understand what kind of value you're going to have in the operating room, at least in my business. And then that fourth phase is, okay, what are these different customer types? How do we drive business with these different customer types? What are these different hospital systems? What is our specific sales process? And guys, when I mean a sales process, it can be anything. If you guys have ever heard of Challenger or spin selling, I'm a big fan of the sales process, SALES. Start with a strategic intent, start with a customer focus. Ask questions, because what do we gain when we ask questions? We listen and we gain insights into what the unmet needs are of the customer. And then we explain our insights. That's the E. And then the S is secure the commitment. You know, like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that movie, Glengarry Glen Ross. We don't get them to sign on the line that is dotted, but we do want to close to secure a commitment to move the sales process along. Next thing on your commissions, I talked a little bit about the compensation. You have a base salary, but the bulk of your compensation are commissions. So some of my reps make 80 base and 100% sales, and they just divide that over your targets on a monthly basis, and then you get commission on a monthly basis, and then if you overperform, you get a quarterly bonus. And I'd be happy to talk to you about some of that stuff more. And then there was a product question. Tell me again what the product question was.
Yes, sir. I was just curious, what would be your like most effective sales technique, for lack of better terms? Like, so right now I'm doing my SDR through Salesforce, and they say like the most important thing, is cold calls, emails, and social media. And I was curious, like, which one would you say has been your most effective at being able to get those sales?
Well, it's important to understand, and I didn't understand this before I came in, but it's important to understand the relationship between what marketing does and what salespeople do. And the number one sales technique is engaging with customers directly. You can send emails. I mean, if you guys just think about how advertising works in general, it's the right message to the right people the right number of times. Heidi talked about earlier, like discussing men's health issues. Well, what's the challenge that I have in my industry? Men don't want to talk about their lack of erectile ability. And so we have to have a strategy to deliver that message, and that's coming from the marketing team, not the sales team. The marketing team needs to deliver the right message to the right people the right number of times in order to move them down the treatment pathway. For me as a sales rep, the biggest value that I have is engaging with customers, because my customer is technically the hospital. It's a B2B business to business sale. The hospital is the one that provides the purchase order, the money for the product, but the doctor is my call point. The doctor is the primary call point, but you got to manage the band, as they call it, because he has an office manager, he has a scheduler, he has a physician's assistant, has all these other people that help him make the decision to say, for this patient who has been ushered here largely by the marketing team, exposing the right message to the right people the right number of times to address their erectile dysfunction. This patient is sitting in front of me as the doctor. You have had to have had that conversation with the doctor to say, hey, this is the value that my product brings, and this is why this is better for this specific patient. And so that when that doctor books that surgery, he goes, Brian was just in here, or one of the Coloplast reps was just in here. He talked to me about this product having an indication for this specific disease state, and I'm going to book my next case with this implant. And that's how we do it. And there's no getting around that. Like our reps in our industry get very comfortable in the operating room. They like being in the operating room. They feel value. But you drive business by having conversations outside the operating room with the physicians about why they should use your product. And that's how you drive business as a salesperson versus a marketing person.
Thank you, Brad.
Yep.
Hey, Brian, I just want to circle back a little bit to your leadership. What is your leadership philosophy, and does it change at all when you transition between your military hat and your corporate hat?
Yeah, I would say the biggest transition is the soft touch. I would say even in the military, I tried to build a culture, a team culture. Hey guys, let's get this done. Hey, let's get this done. Hey, what do you think about this, Sergeant? What do you think about this, Sergeant? This is our mission. Let's sit down and do some mission analysis. Let's get it done. Okay, who's going to do what? And you lead in that direction. But at the end of the day, you know, and this gonna sound really bad, especially since we're all military people. If I outrank you, rock paper rank, do what I say. Um, you have to have a softer touch as a corporate business leader. And that's something that I had to be supremely aware of when I transitioned out. I can't lead the same way. I gotta use my soft touch. I gotta use my influence. I gotta use all of those skills we learn from the time that we're a section sergeant until the time we're a battalion commander. How do you grow influence out of your sphere of influence? And how do you talk to people, and how do you achieve the effect? Because what's common in the military and what's common in the corporate business world is the end state. Every mission every op order has an end state. What's the end state for me? You just have to kind of modify how you're going to get your team to the end state in the corporate business world differently than you do in the military. Military is a little bit, we're all together all the time, even if we have to go up to battalion, and we're pushing orders down, and everyone knows their role and responsibility, and they've been conditioned by the organization. These are our values. These are our regulations. This is what we need to get done. So there's a lot of stuff that happens very quickly in the military. What happens quickly in the corporate business world is driving revenue and making money. And so that all of your reps are very pumped about going out there to make money, and we're pumped about having them make money. But what are those administrative tasks that we need them to get done? How do we help them see the bigger picture? Because we can't force them to do it. Part of the question about product was like, how do we get that product to the customer? We get that product to the customer by moving it out of distribution facilities. Well, I have several reps right now that have product that's just sitting out in their territories, and it needs to get back. I can't order them to get it back. I can tell them to get it back, you know, and I can hound them a little bit, but ultimately they're the ones that are going to have to get off their butt, go grab the product and send it back. So it's a little bit different in that regard. But for those of you with leadership experience on the call, you're 80 to 85% there. You just have to get out, understand the new environment that you're in, and that's going to change company to company. It's going to change industry to industry. But you just need to gain an awareness and learn your job and see, okay, what skills apply. And you already have a lot of them. And so it'll be there will be there are going to be some things that are tougher than you think, and there's going to be some things that are easier than you think, when you transition off of active duty into the into whatever, whatever line of work you're thinking about getting into.
Definitely going to be some adjustments from the military into the civilian world. That whole shut up and color thing is not going to be a thing going into the civilian world. Definitely going to have to sell them on why you should do that. So that was a good point to be made for leadership for sure. So with that said, what skills, hard or soft, do you feel work best in your career field?
Probably just some of the things that I've said. It's there were like some of those easy things were like mission, 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 mission. What I love about the sales world, I won't ask for a show of hands, but who hates like the evaluation process in the military? It's like there are things that like, have any of you on the call ever received a vanilla evaluation when you're like, I just spent the last year of my life working my butt off, and because, and this may sound very specific to some people, but because the Alpha Troop commander went to the same school as the squadron commander, he's getting a top block and I'm getting just a vanilla evaluation. And so what I like about the sales world is it's mission focused like the military, but I know where I stand every single day. And right now, I'm number one. So life is really good for me. And and so there are some of those, commonalities. I've talked about on this call some of the skill sets that you need. Um, just I would say the biggest skill set, and you probably learned it at some point in your PME, is emotional intelligence. That I feel that the two best indicators of success in any walk of life are grit and emotional intelligence. Do you have the ability to overcome obstacles? And I would say if you're in the military right now, the answer to that's probably yes. We've all been literally or figuratively punched in the face, and we've all had to, pick our cover up and get back after it. You have grit, you have determination, use that, and have emotional intelligence. Be able to read your people, be able to have that self-awareness of knowing, like, I knew when I got out of the military, I had a certain way of talking to people. It's a lot of knife handing, it was a lot of being 6'4" and 250 pounds and like, hey, soldier, you're going to go do X, Y, and Z. When I got out of the military, I'm a support player. Do you know who the number one guy in that room is? The doctor, the nurses. Everybody is more important to me in that room for patient care. I'm there to make sure that the case goes smoothly. So having that emotional intelligence, having that self-awareness, having that grit to be able to overcome when you're out there selling and you're told no all the time. So yeah, just some of those. There's some really good books you guys can read. I always bring up the book To Sell as Human for those people who are thinking about getting into it. There's a book out there specifically called Emotional Intelligence. I'd highly recommend that you read that book. And just do an inventory yourself. What type of leader are you in the military, and how might that clash in the corporate business world or whatever walk of life? I have some buddies that have gotten out. My best Army friend is Jeff Gagliano, and there's no way I would ever tell him to go in the corporate business world. One of the best officers I've ever served with in the military, that dude needed to stay in the military. And now where is he? He's working for the Department of the Army. And that's exactly where he needs to be. So if you're one of those people, you're like, I don't think I can adapt to corporate life. Well, then look for other opportunities that might allow you to keep that same skill set that you have now, that you're very, very good at, and transition into something where they value those skills. If you're one of those people that says, I hate people, the sales world might not be a good place for you, because we are full of people and those people control your income. So you better learn to love them.
Brian, this was awesome. This was so good, man. Thank you so much for doing this. And Megan and Heidi, appreciate you guys. You did awesome once again at emceeing. But Brian, thank you, man.
Yeah,
Great
absolutely.
info. I love your passion and your energy and how much you care for your brothers and sisters. So we appreciate you.
Yeah, no, thank you for the opportunity, and seriously, guys, you know, I want to be able to help as much as I can. You know, please reach out to me. I got a lot going on, so it might not be immediate, but I will schedule us some time to talk some more if you guys are interested in anything that I said today, elaborating on it, expanding on it, and I just appreciate the opportunity. This
You
has been
got it. Thank you, buddy. Have a good day. Thanks
you
again.
too. Thanks.
All right, guys. Good job, Meg. That was awesome for your first one. All right, so why don't we take lunch and we will come back in a little over an hour. Thank you, everyone.